Hi, everyone, and welcome to English for You. I'm Erin.
And I'm Mike.
And we are about to talk about a very, very cold thing, and that is winter in Canada.
Oh, that's a very, very cold thing to talk about for sure. And it's one of the reasons I'm here in Taiwan. We're both from Canada. We're from slightly different parts of Canada, but near to each other. So I imagine for you in New Brunswick, winter is cold. In
very
Quebec,
snowy.
where I'm from, it's cold. What are some of the sort of lowest temperatures you kind of remember going to school in, or on a normal day in the winter?
Lower minus 30s. So minus 38, minus 39, maybe even a minus 40.
Oh my gosh. Maybe because I was in the city, it was more like minus 25.
Right. We were definitely
30.
not in the city. It gets a bit colder out in the rural areas.
So, imagine where you put your ice cream and your ice in your fridge, that small part up at the top. That's about minus 3.
Right.
And I think the coldest it might get in Taiwan is maybe 5 degrees.
I've seen it once in my time here down to 1.
Down to 1, and if you're up in the mountains, it would be
a little bit colder.
A bit colder, but so we're talking about much colder than that.
Right.
And, it's great if you like making snowmen or going skiing. That can be great. But living there, imagine living there.
It's pretty tough.
And imagine living there not in a city, not even in a house.
Right.
This is the kind of thing we're going to be talking about today. You can actually live outside and use the snow to build a house.
That's right.
I've never done this. I've never stayed in one, and I don't really want to.
Okay.
But I have to admit, when I see people do it on TV, it's pretty cool.
It is pretty cool.
And actually, when you make one, it can be quite warm inside.
And that's what we're going to find all about today. We're going to find out all about these igloos, these snow houses, what they're like inside, how to build them. So why don't we get started?
Reading.
Igloos, staying warm in a house of snow. In Canada's far north, temperatures can drop to negative 50 degrees Celsius in the winter. These days, people there live in houses made with common building materials, such as wood. This wasn't possible in the past, however, as trees don't grow there. Instead, Inuit people used snow to build shelters. Today, we know these snow houses as igloos. The Inuit people traveled from season to season, pursuing the animals they hunted for food. Therefore, they needed easy-to-build temporary shelters that would keep them warm, especially when they were ice fishing. Luckily, the compacted snow that igloos are made of helps insulate the living area inside. In spite of the freezing temperatures outside, it can be quite warm inside an igloo. An igloo's entrance is at the lower end of the shelter. Inside, the living area should be a platform. Since heat rises, the raised area stays warm, while the cold air moves toward the entrance. Finally, people's body heat helps raise the temperature inside, bringing comfort on a chilly Arctic night.
All right, so our article begins by setting our scene and kind of giving us an idea of what winter can be like in this part of the world. It says, in Canada's far north, temperatures can drop to minus 50 degrees Celsius in the winter. Okay, so I said minus 20, minus 25. Erin mentioned maybe minus 35. Minus 50 is even colder than that. But as we point out at the beginning of the sentence, this is in the far north. So we're talking close to the North Pole. There are no cities up there. There are a few towns. Very few people live up there. because it's so cold,
Right.
because the temperatures can drop to such a low temperature. When we use drop here, we're not talking about sort of letting something fall out of your hand or pushing something off a table, how a glass will drop to the floor. We're talking about going down, especially as numbers. All right, so numbers can go down, numbers can rise, or numbers can drop. We often use this when talking about the temperature, how, the summer it can be hot and the winter can be cold because the temperature drops. Or here's another example. The price of a train ticket often drops during the week. It goes down during the week.
All right, well, now we know how cold it can get up in that area.
Cold.
And we're going to kind of get straight into what we're talking about, and that's kind of some of the buildings that you might see up there. So it says, these days, people there live in houses made with common building materials, such as wood, which is true. I mean, you're not going to see, you'll see a lot of houses that are normally built up there now. Now, we're talking about making these houses with common building materials. Now, we're going to look at the grammar pattern be made with. And we can use the word make in several different ways when we're talking about using materials or making something out of something. Now, we use made with to talk about making something with several different kinds of materials, such as here. So houses can be made with wood, cement, steel, other kind of materials like that. It depends where you live, what kind of house or what kind of material you'll use to make a house. Now, when we combine all of these different things to make one thing, we use that phrase, be made with. Now, as an example, we could say, I made this soup with meat, vegetables, water, and spices. So those are all the different things that you can make something with. Here's another one. This special Mother's Day card was made with pictures of Daniel's mom and some craft supplies.
So you brought all those things together to create a new thing. So yes, houses in the north of Canada are similar to houses in many parts of the world. They're made with wood, steel, glass, things like that. But the article says this wasn't possible in the past, however, as trees don't grow there.
That's right.
That's
too
a
cold.
good point. If you want wood, you need trees. And back in the old days, when you used to build with what was around you, if there are no trees, there are no houses because there's no wood. So what did people live in? What kind of homes did they live in?
That's right. Okay, well, it says here, instead, Inuit people used snow to build shelters.
Homes made of snow.
Okay, so before we get into that, let's talk about the adverb instead. Now, we use this word to show that one thing is done or true when another thing is not done or true. For example, we said that people in the north couldn't build using wood because there were no trees. Now, that is the thing that is not done. Then we use the word instead to introduce the thing that is done. That's to use snow to build houses. So we're not going to use wood, we're going to use snow. Okay, so here's another example. Diana doesn't drive to work. Instead, she rides a bicycle. Now, before we go on to talk about these shelters, we should probably just let you know what Inuit people, or what we mean by that. So Inuit people, Inuit is a wide term that's used to talk about all the different groups of indigenous people that live in the far north of Canada, the I guess, island Greenland, and in Alaska, that northernmost state of the U.S.
That's right. Some of you also might know the term Eskimo, E-S-K-I-M-O. That's a term that's used in America to talk about these people in Canada. We prefer the term Inuit, which I believe means the people in their language. It's just the way they would call themselves. They don't say natives or aborigines. They call themselves the Inuit. Yes, and they used snow to build shelters. Can you imagine that? A house made of snow. And that's basically what a shelter is. It's a house. It's a building. It's basically anything that will protect you from the weather. It will protect you from snow or rain or wind or cold or things like that. The shelters that we live in are apartments or homes or things like that. But if you're out in the forest, if you're camping, your shelter might be a tent. Or if you don't have a tent, your shelter might just be a few pieces of wood you kind of of put together to keep yourself safe from the wind and the rain and the snow and things like that. For example, this small hut is a shelter for hikers. There might not even be a door. There probably won't be a kitchen or anything like that. But if you're in the mountains and it's raining really hard and you're getting cold and wet, this shelter could be enough to save you from, getting in serious trouble. It will protect you from the weather.
Okay, well, let's find out more about these interesting shelters. It says here, today we know these snow houses as igloos. All right, when you know A as B, or when you know one thing as another thing, you are familiar with that thing in a certain way. So here what we're saying is that these traditional snow houses have a certain name in English, even though they may have another name in a different language, so as the Inuit language. So in northern Canada or in Inuit languages, these snow houses are called igloo, and it's spelled differently, I-G-L-U. But we know them as igloo, I-G-L-O-O, in English. So it's just when one thing is when you know one thing as a certain way, but it may be another thing in a different language or a different area of the world.
Okay. As we mentioned, many Inuit people today live in towns, in homes that we would recognize. But back in the old days, they didn't. In fact, they didn't have towns at all. It says the Inuit people traveled from season to season, pursuing the animals they hunted for food. Imagine a place with no trees. You can't have farms because you can't grow things. The ground is covered with ice and snow maybe 9-10 months out of the year. What do you eat? Well, you eat what's there, and that's about animals, basically. Very few fruits or anything like that. So they have to follow or pursue or chase these animals. Not all the time, but as the animals move around finding food, so the Inuit people have to follow them around to be near the food. That's what they did. And pursue is basically like to chase or to follow or to go after. All right, for example, the police officer pursued the bank robber as he ran down an alley. The police officer is trying to catch the bank robber in the same way that Inuit people would be trying to catch animals for food. For a different reason, but they can't lose them. They have to be able to catch them eventually.
That's right. Okay, so they're following these animals around this kind of big ice snow-filled area, and they don't want to just build a new house every time they move around.
Can't do that.
Exactly. So it says, therefore, they needed easy-to-build temporary shelters that would keep them warm, especially when they were ice fishing.
Kind of like a tent, but they didn't have tents.
Yeah. Well, they would have tents in the summer.
Oh, maybe,
Yeah, but they would make tents out of like animal skin.
But in the winter, that wouldn't help.
It's too cold, right. So they are going to make easy-to-build temporary shelters. So easy to build, we're just kind of using the hyphens to make these three words into a single adjective. Okay, so easy to build just means it's not going to be difficult to build this shelter. And temporary describes something that's meant to be used for only a short period of time. Now, of course, an igloo is not going to last forever because as soon as the weather warms up, it's going to melt. It's made of snow. So that's why we say igloos are temporary. They can only be used in very cold weather. Now, as an example, we might say, the soldiers built a temporary bridge over the flooded river. So that bridge probably won't last forever. It might get washed away by the water, but it will last long enough to get the soldiers over the water.
Or to fix the other bridge that was damaged or something. So there you go. These temporary homes, of course, they won't be there when the sun warms up. The snow will melt. And also remember, they have to pursue the animals. So as the animals move, they have to leave that home just to continue to follow or chase the animals. So luckily, it says the compacted snow that igloos are made of helps insulate the living area inside. So that's the good news. As I mentioned, yes, the igloo's walls are made of snow, but the good news is that inside this igloo, inside this building or house made of snow, it's quite warm,
Right.
all right? And why is that? It's because of the compacted snow that igloos are made of. Basically, they take some snow and then they sort of push it together so it almost becomes like a brick. So this isn't loose snow. It's more like the snow that you might make if you're making a snowball or a snowman. It can actually stick together. It's been compacted. Something that's compacted is pressed together, so it's much stronger. It's much more solid. There's less space in between all the little bits.
Right. Okay, so we also had another grammar point in that sentence. Here we used be made of. So before we used be made with, now we're using be made of. Now, this is another way that we can use to talk about materials. So when we're using be made of, we are saying that a material that you use does not change in any way. So the material stays the same no matter how you use it. For example, an igloo is made of snow because the snow doesn't change in any way. It doesn't become water, it doesn't become ice, it stays snow. We could also say the chair is made of wood. So you took some wood, you nailed it together, now you can sit on it. You didn't change the wood into paper, you didn't kind of add oil or something to it to kind of change what it is. However, sometimes materials can change in a certain way or in some way. Now, if the material does change, we say be made from. So we've got 3 of them here now. Be made with, be made of, and be made from. Now, let's look at an example of the chair again. We could say this chair was made from trees. Now, we know that trees start out by growing in the ground, but then we cut them down and we change them into wood.
Yes.
And we use the wood to make the chair. So we could say this chair was made of wood, but this chair was made from trees.
Okay, so making a chair with a tree would be hard because you'd need a tree that's shaped like a chair.
Right, exactly.
But making a chair with wood is much easier because that's a lot of chairs are made from.
Right.
Okay, I get it.
One more example, really quick. This juice was made from apples. Now, you can't drink an apple.
No.
You have to change the apple to juice before you drink it. That's why we say made from, because the apple changed in some way.
Okay, and we also had this word to insulate. We're talking about how this compacted solid snow helps to insulate the area inside the igloo. Well, remember, we're talking about keeping things warm, and that's what to insulate is. This verb basically means to cover something or to protect something in order to keep the heat or the cold inside away from the different temperature outside.
Right.
All right, so we use refrigerators to insulate our food from the warm weather. If you leave your milk out on a hot day,
bad milk.
It'll turn into nasty cheese or something. So you put it in the fridge. The coldness of the fridge and what it's made of, the metal that it's made of, and all that stuff insulates the temperature. Or if you're outside on a cold day, you might feel, your skin is cold and you're shaking a little bit to warm up. Well, put on a jacket or a sweater to insulate your body. It will keep the side that's on the inside of the shirt warm and the part that's on the outside, the air, away from you. So it will insulate your body from the cold air.
All right. Now, because of this insulation, that's the noun form, so insulation, insulation. So because of this, it stays warm. It says, in spite of the freezing temperatures outside, it can be quite warm inside an igloo.
There you go. It's the same thing that works when it's a really cold night in your bedroom, and then after 5 minutes under your blanket, you feel really warm on the inside, right? Under the blanket, you might even be too hot.
Yeah.
Because you've warmed up the inside, but the air outside is still cold. But you don't feel it anymore. You've been insulated.
Right.
And here's another thing that helps. It says an igloo's entrance is at the lower end of the shelter. So the doors or the entrances, the ways into the igloo are designed in a way that keeps the warm air inside and the cold air outside. An entrance is basically just a way into somewhere. A door is an entrance into a room. We often use it as an opposite to exit. The exit is the way out. The entrance is the way in. For example, this is the exit. The entrance is over there. A lot of, big buildings or shopping malls, movie theaters might have one door you go in, that's the entrance, and one door you go out, that's the exit.
Right. Okay. So let's find out a little bit more about what's going on inside the igloo. It says, inside the living area should be a platform. So that's basically just like saying the door is going to be kind of on the low bottom.
Okay.
And then inside there's going to be like a step where you kind of stay on the top end of the igloo.
That's like the bed or the living room area. And as you know, a lot of you know, warm air goes up while cold air goes down. So if you're above the ground, it will be warmer.
That's
as the article says, since heat rises, the raised area stays warm while the cold air moves toward the entrance.
Yeah.
Great.
That's easy.
Yeah.
All right. And there's another reason that it stays warm inside an igloo. It says, finally, people's body heat helps raise the temperature inside, bringing comfort on a chilly Arctic night.
Oh, this is like being under that blanket.
Right.
Your body makes it warm.
Your body will make it warm, and the more people you have in the igloo, the warmer it will be. And we use the word Arctic here as an adjective. That just means very cold. Arctic can also be used as a noun, the Arctic. That's the place at the North Pole. But here, it's just an adjective to say it's a very cold night. It's an Arctic night.
There you go.
Well, we're all out of time today for our igloo article. We'll be back again tomorrow. But for now, our For You Chat.
For You Chat.
Okay, well, we're talking about living in a really cold place like the Inuit do in the Arctic. And that temperature there in the winter would definitely make your life difficult. But that's our chat question. What's something that makes your life difficult in some way? How can you make it better?
Well, easy question for me.
Okay.
I don't speak Chinese very well. I speak a little bit of Chinese. In Taiwan, this can sometimes make my life pretty difficult. Now, the best way to make it better, of course, is to learn Chinese.
There you go. How is that working?
When I have a problem and I really need to know something, I do learn it. I am a good girl. I go out and I learn how to solve that problem in Chinese. And, it's been a slow process to learn Chinese that way, but when I do need to do something, I kind of make that effort.
Well, good for you. As anyone who's learning a language, Chinese, or
English.
the people listening English, it's all about practice, practice, practice.
That's right.
The more you can do, the better you'll feel, and the better your skill will be. And also, you can use an app.
That's right.
But learning it is the best way. Yeah. All right, guys. What about you? Is there something that makes your life difficult? Have a chat about that. And please do join us tomorrow. We'll have a lot more about these snow houses, igloos, coming up. So we'll see you then.
Bye-bye.
Igloos, staying warm in a house of snow. In Canada's far north, temperatures can drop to negative 50 degrees Celsius in the winter. These days, people there live in houses made with common building materials, such as wood. This wasn't possible in the past, however, as trees don't grow there. Instead, Inuit people used snow to build shelters. Today, we know these snow houses as igloos. The Inuit people traveled from season to season, pursuing the animals they hunted for food. Therefore, they needed easy-to-build temporary shelters that would keep them warm, especially when they were ice fishing. Luckily, the compacted snow that igloos are made of helps insulate the living area inside. In spite of the freezing temperatures outside, it can be quite warm inside an igloo. An igloo's entrance is at the lower end of the shelter. Inside, the living area should be a platform. Since heat rises, the raised area stays warm, while the cold air moves toward the entrance. Finally, people's body heat helps raise the temperature inside, bringing comfort on a chilly Arctic night.
Vocabulary Review.
Drop. Wear a jacket if you go out. The temperature is supposed to drop below 0 today. Instead. Don't take the bus there. Instead, you should take the train, which is a lot quicker. Shelter. These people don't have regular houses. They live in shelters that they move from place to place. Pursue. The wolves pursued the deer for many hours before it got tired. Temporary. This is just a temporary building. The company will knock it down sometime next year. Entrance. 2 guards stood by the entrance of the room to make sure only government employees entered it.